Today's video, you get to watch me spend way too much money on a machine I still probably won't be using that much of.
We review all technology from games to all PCs, and don't forget the thought. Get ancient electronics, we cover it all.
This is my Apple IIe computer. I did a video on this very computer several months ago. I will leave a link in the description. If you haven't watched that video, I definitely urge you to watch it now and then come back and watch this video, since primarily we're just going to be talking about some upgrades that I'm doing with this machine. So anyways, in that video, we went over the Apple II that I had. We talked about the disk drive. We had some fun with it. We played some games, ran them off the disk. We tried an accelerator in there. It didn't work. But in the end of that video, I kind of came to the conclusion that it really wasn't my favorite home computer. I had grown to respect it. I have a lot of respect for what it did in the home computer industry, and for its time, it's a very, very influential computer. If you love collecting retro computers, you definitely should have one in your collection. But it really wasn't my personal favorite for a few reasons. I kind of thought that the Apple fanatics would come down on me hard. I thought I'd get some, hateful comments, but I really didn't get many comments. But what I basically said is the reason I didn't think the Apple IIe was, at least for me personally, is well, I like exclusives. I love exclusives that take specific advantages of what a certain machine can do, and the Apple II just doesn't have a ton of exclusives. And the exclusives it does have, and it does have some exclusives that I personally would be interested in, a lot of like war simulation games, there's a few RPGs, I believe, stuff that I would really be interested in. So unless you're really into emulation and stuff, actually getting the physical copies of these exclusives, they're rare and they tend to be really expensive. So that's one negative. The other thing is, even though there are a ton of games available for the Apple IIe, a lot of those just have superior ports on other home computers of the time. Even on the IBM, where you could argue that maybe the graphics aren't as good, you could argue that the Apple IIe, which isn't a graphical powerhouse, but you can argue that, the ugly CGA with early IBM compatible computers, maybe it actually looks a little better when you're using composite on a monitor, but there's still a lot of ease of use on the IBM PC. You could just you could easily install it to a hard drive and things like that. And then you have things like the Atari computers and the Commodore 64 where, you could probably easily argue they have just better graphics and sound. So that was some of the reasons that I didn't really think I personally would be using the Apple IIe that much. And after that video, shortly after that video, I kind of disassembled it and packed it away, since it was really just taking up my limited amount of desk space. But something recently changed. I decided to pull this guy back out, and I decided to do some three kind of fundamental upgrades. And I haven't done these upgrades yet. I haven't even installed them. So this is going to be a journey we're going to take together. But before we look at the upgrades I bought for this, and I kind of made a joke at the beginning of the video. I did, for a working class guy like myself, the money I did spend on the upgrades, it was a bit much for me, and I probably still, even after these upgrades, I'm not gonna probably still not gonna use this machine a ton, but that's just me. I'm the kind of guy that, I'll buy a 287 or an 8087 math coprocessor just because I hate the empty socket and feeling it's unused, even though I'm really not going to be using and utilizing it so much. It's the same kind of thing with this Apple IIe. I just kind of feel the need to upgrade, even though I still probably will not be heavily using this guy. But before that, let me show you the initial thing that sort of sparked my, I guess, urge to upgrade and pull the Apple IIe back out. Alright, so what sparked this urge to get the Apple IIe out and sort of upgrade it? Alright, here we go. This is probably old news to a lot of you, but this is Nox Arcanist. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this is kind of a new fan game that's come out, and it is a Apple II exclusive. Of course, it will also run on the GS and whatnot. But This is still sealed, but if you open it, there are actually Apple II discs in there, and you can just play it right on your Apple IIe. It supports things like sound, the Mockingboard, and things like that. And yeah, so this is like a new, there's no pictures on the back. So this is like a new, well done fan game that has recently come out for the Apple IIe. And it is an RPG, and it's like right up my alley. As of a few months ago, this was still available from the website for a reasonable price. So I had to snatch it up, and of course, being the purist I am, I wanted to play it on a real Apple IIe, but I wanted to get the most out of this game. So another thing I want to say, this game, I would open it up and do one of those unboxing things, but I kind of want to keep it sealed because when you buy this game, you do also get like a digital copy. So this game does support, like if you have a floppy drive emulator, I've seen people on YouTube able to play it on their Apple IIe if they have an Apple IIe floppy emulator, but you can also play this off the hard drive if you have like a hard drive card. So I've just kind of given away there a couple of the upgrades I'm doing to this Apple IIe. So this is what inspired me to pull out my Apple IIe and upgrade it again. So let's take a look at what upgrades we're going to do in this video. So the first upgrade we're going to look at, this is the Floppy Emu. This is from Big Mess of Wires. Last time I checked, this was still available. Basically, this is a floppy drive emulator. I believe it can also be used in some cases as like a hard drive emulator. This works on the Apple II, I believe the Apple IIgs, and I believe it also works on Mac. So I kind of got this. This is just going to be kind of universally useful. I remember when I initially did my video on the Apple IIe, a lot of the Apple II discs I had, the disk drives worked fine, but a lot of the discs I had kind of had issues, and they just wouldn't run. And this would just make things a lot easier. Now, I'm not a huge fan of like the GoTech drives, and it's not that I'm not a huge fan of them. They're extremely useful, but I don't like to install them internally on computers because I think it really destroys the retro look. I think it just looks hideous, like in an Amiga, like the box case where they're at the front, or like on an IBM PC. They just look weird. They just look out of place, and I don't like them. I don't have as much of a problem though when it's like an external device that's kind of like off to the side and away from the main PC. That doesn't bother me too much. If I did have the Apple IIe in like a permanent setup, I'd probably have the actual disk drives out. Probably just not have them connected up though, and then just have this guy off to the side. Again, I've not powered this thing up. I haven't used it, but I have heard really good things about it. That you just get an Apple IIe like disk image. You put it on a SD card. I have it somewhere here. This is from them. I think it already has a couple utilities and games on it. We'll have to test it. And basically, this thing here should plug into the back of the Apple II, where I have my floppy disk controller card. And then this should plug into that. And I also got a little bonus thing here. I have this to kind of sit between them. So the floppy emulator would plug into this guy, and then this would plug into the Apple IIe. Basically, what this is just like a little clacker thing. So generally, this thing would be silent. I believe there's lights on it that tell you, when it's reading and writing a disk. But this will actually make the little sounds. So it's not perfect. It's not going to sound like a, I don't think it's going to sound like a floppy disk drive accessing and reading a disk, but it's something to add a little bit to the atmosphere, reading a floppy disk. These are relatively cheap. I believe I also got this from the Disk Knocker 1.0. I believe. Yeah, here, I also got this from Big Mess of Wires. Generally, if you get this thing, if you want to get kind of a better, more authentic experience, get the little the Disk Knocker as well. I'd also like to add right here, I'm not sponsored by any of these people. They didn't give me these things. They don't even know I exist. I just bought these on my own. So I just want to let you guys know, full transparency, these weren't like gifts to me or samples. I'm not being sponsored here. So anyways, yeah, that's the first thing I want to do. I suspect this will be very useful even for future projects, since this does work on a Mac and all. Now, I said a little bit earlier, this functions as a hard drive emulator as well, but I've heard some mixed things. I don't think you can boot certain things off it, or it's a little more complicated or complex. So I did want to get kind of like a completely separate device to work as kind of like a permanent hard fixed disk, and then just use this solely as a floppy drive emulator. Right there. I guess I'll just show you guys right here. That's where you install like the mini SD card, and there's a nice little display. Again, I have not used this or hooked it up, so I have no idea if it works or how to use it. So that's gonna be an adventure. All right, moving on. So the next thing we want to look at is what I went with for sort of a fixed disk or a hard drive emulator in the Apple II. And there are several options out there available, but I went with this guy from Retroactive Micro. So as I was saying, this is from, or not Retro, sorry. This is from Reactive Micro. This is the Reactive Micro Drive Turbo, or the Turbo Drive. Now, as I said, there were several options out there. Initially, I wanted to go with a card called the Booty card. I just heard the Booty card, yes. Because I seen it, it seemed to be really user-friendly, and it seemed to support all kind of disk images and stuff, but apparently they don't make those anymore. I tried to contact the guys that make them, but I didn't hear anything back. They were pretty cheap, too, pretty affordable, but it just doesn't seem like they make them anymore, and I couldn't find a second-hand one. So I went with this guy. Again, as of currently, what I'm in October 2022, these were still available on Reactive Micro's website, and they're not too expensive. They're about $100 or a little under, give or take. This is known as being the fastest hard drive emulator for the Apple IIe. It does use DMA, so it is a little bit faster, or actually sometimes a lot faster than some of the other options out there. I don't think it supports, I don't know for sure if it supports like every kind of disk image. I don't know. I found some conflicting information on that, so I'm not really 100% sure how user-friendly this is. The website and the documentation says I should just plug this thing in and it should just work. It uses CF cards. It can actually use 2 of them. I got the one here. This is 512 megabyte, and this one's kind of plug and play. It does require apparently power there, I think. I'll have to look at the documentation again if I need to connect that, or if this is just a generic CF to IDE adapter here. But this should be plug and play according to them. So I plug this in and it just boots up to whatever they have on that disk, which is some kind of Apple DOS or Apple OS. I am not familiar with Apple IIes that much, so I don't know anything about like the Apple operating systems. But doing some looking on the Knox Arcanist website, they have a page that talks about what hard drive cards for the Apple IIe are compatible with the game. And although this one wasn't officially listed, if you scroll down and you look at the different the comment section, there are several users that use the program called CiderPress, who put the hard drive image onto the CF card, and using this hard drive card successfully were able to play the game on their Apple IIe without any problems. So hopefully I'm not going to have any issues with this and putting the game on it and playing it just from the hard drive. Now, again, I like I said, I have seen people use this to play the game as floppy images, but it's a little clunky. I'd rather just run it as like if it was installed on a hard drive. Alright, so let's look at the last upgrade I'll be doing here. So the last upgrade we're going to look at here is the sound card upgrade. Now, the Apple IIe was not known for its dazzling sound capabilities, but there were a few sound cards actually made for it. And this is a clone, or I guess like a remake of a sound card, the most famous, the Mockingboard for the Apple IIe. I believe it was the most prolific sound card for the Apple IIe and the most supported. So this would be a modern clone of that board. It should be almost exactly the same. It should have 100% compatibility. There were a couple little improvements made to it though, but otherwise it's pretty much a fairly faithful clone as far as I know. Now this guy is also from Reactive Micro. It is the Mockingboard version 2.2. There were several revisions of the original Mockingboard, I believe. I think this is a clone of the C revision, which is the last one. It's probably the best one. But anyways, it has a little stereo jack right here. Let's take a look. It's got a little stereo jack right there if it will focus. So anyways, so not a ton of Apple II games do support this, but I know some do, and I do know Nox Arcanist does support this board. I'm not super familiar with all the specs of it, but I believe it supports 6 voices, I believe. It also came with this little cable here, so you can connect this guy to the Apple IIe board, and then any of the internal speaker beeps will actually go through this board and will output to external speakers, which is pretty cool. Right here we have 2 empty chips. Those are for sound, like speech synthesizer chips, I believe. I tried looking for them. I believe they're kind of hard to track down. And I don't really know if many games actually support these speech synthesizer chips. I'm not sure if anyone watching this video knows like a good source for these chips, or if any games even support them. Let me know. I might track them down and put them in here, because as I said earlier in this video, I just hate empty sockets. But yeah, I have not acquired them yet. I also want to note that there is another sound card out there, I believe it's also available from Reactive Micro, and it is the Phaser card. And it's kind of a more advanced version of this. I believe the Phaser was also something that came out during the time period of the Apple IIe, so the one on Reactive Micro is also a clone of this Phaser card. And it's a little more advanced. Instead of 6 voice channels or voices, it supports double that, 12. And after buying this, I kind of had a little bit of buyer's remorse, and I was kind of considering maybe going back and buying the Phaser card just because it's, you know, supposedly better. But after talking to some people, you know, making a post over at the Vintage Computer Forums and getting some replies, I don't think I'm going to do that. Apparently, even though the Phaser card is backwards compatible with this guy here, there's still some compatibility issues, at least in an Apple IIe. And also, I don't know if a ton of games really actually even support the extra voices. Someone gave an example of Ultima 5 does natively support the Phaser card, but of all its tracks, only 2 actually take advantage of it. And even those 2 tracks only do like 1 extra voice or 1 extra channel. So there's 2 tracks from Ultima 5 that use 7 channels. I mean, it's probably not a huge difference. It's probably not worth it. So I just decided to go keep the good old Mockingboard and go with this guy instead. So now that we've looked at all of the upgrades I would like to do, let's try installing them. See if I can get any of this stuff working. Real quick before I open this guy up and install our upgrades, I do want to talk real quick about a couple upgrades I did not decide to go with. I'll start off with an accelerator. First off, I didn't go with an accelerator, even though I believe Reactive Micro also offers like a 13 megahertz accelerator for Apple IIe, which is huge. I believe it's for the Apple IIe. Even if it's not, there are other accelerators out there. Remember we tried one in our last video, and it's really old. It probably just wasn't working, but it just froze up our system several times. None of these games are really meant for anything other than what's in the Apple IIe. So personally for me, just playing games on this thing, an accelerator wasn't really any benefit to me, so I didn't go with an accelerator. A couple other things that might be more useful is there's also like RAM expansions, fairly affordable RAM expansions that can up your RAM to like 4 megabytes. I already have like a full megabyte in here, which is way more than is probably necessary. So again, just for me playing Apple IIe games on the Apple IIe, I really didn't find a need for like massive amounts of memory in this thing. I don't really think it supports or I find any benefit in games. If I'm wrong about that, let me know, but I feel like 1 megabyte's more than enough. Again, let me know if I'm wrong on that, and I need 4 megabytes. And the last thing in there, which was actually one that was really tempting, and I might still advise you guys to get it if you have an Apple IIe, and I might still get it, is they do make like power supply replacements, or like you can replace the innards of the power supply. Mine, at least last time I fired this guy up, is working, but I am seriously considering in the near future maybe buying that and swapping out my power supply for like a, not necessarily upgraded, but you know, like a new power supply. So that's probably something I would advise doing, and I might do it in the future. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's open this guy up and let's install our upgrades. Alright, so what do we have in here? A little refresher. Now the ROMs on this machine are upgraded. So I believe like the Apple IIc ROMs. We've got our disk controller right here, going to the back. We have our modem here, which I'm never going to use, so if I need to take this guy out, that's not a problem. And then we have our memory expansion right here that should expand us up to the full 1 megabyte. Alright, so first let's install our sound card. So let me take a look at the documentation. Thing with Apple IIe is a lot of times like certain cards do best installed in certain slots, so I want to see what slot the sound card's best to be installed in. And again, I'm not sponsored by these guys, but this was in one of the packaging. It's for Reactive Micro. I don't know why I want to call them Retroactive Micro. Well, I do know, but Reactive Micro. Here's the Mockingboard I got. So right here's the transwarp. This is the accelerator that they sell that I was talking about, of 16 megahertz. Replacement motherboard. This is that. I think this is that memory thing I was talking about with the 4 megs of RAM. Here's the micro drive turbo that I have, and they even have this mini HDMI LC monitor. That's way beyond something I want to do. The purist in me kind of looks at that and is a little bit like, ugh, but you know, I'm talking about being a purist, but I'm putting in these, whatever. Alright, so I did uninstall that modem that I had. I didn't want a card in here that I wasn't really going to be using, stressing the power supply any. It wasn't really a point in it. So I did take out the modem, and here is the Mockingboard. Looking up on their website for Reactive Micro, they suggest you can install it in any slot, they said, but most programs look for the card in slots 4 or 5. So I put it in slot 4, and there's a hole, well, there's one in either one, although I don't have a way. Actually, I'd have to put the speaker cord through here and plug it in there. I'm gonna have to get like a little extender that I can plug into there, and it will like kind of hang out, and then I can just plug the speaker connector into it. And here you just connect this right here to where the speaker was connected on the board. I'm not sure if the orientation is right. I won't know till I try firing it up. They said if the speaker beeps, it's correct. If it doesn't, just change the orientation. So just pop this out and flip it, and that should work. So now I'm going to install the hard card emulator. So for the Mockingboard sound card, I'm going to use a little audio extender cable like this. So I'll just plug this guy into the sound card right there, the Mockingboard. And then there's like there's a hole right there, and I'll stick this out there, and then I can just plug any speakers into it right there. So that should make things pretty easy and convenient. Alright, so I've installed my hard drive card in slot 6. Again, the wiki for this card says you can install it in any slot, but they recommend slot 7. But they said they recommend putting it in slot 7 even if you have to take out or move your floppy controller card, but I don't know, it should work here too. I don't know if putting it in slot other than 7 makes it a little slower or something like that. I don't know. We'll just put it here for now in slot 6 and see what happens. So I guess we're ready to, I gotta hunt down the monitor for this guy and fire it up, see what happens. Alright, not sure what to expect. I've got everything hooked up. I've got the monitor hooked up, and I've got the speakers over here hooked up. So I'm going to power it on, and let's see if anything happens. Apple IIe. I heard a little, like a fuzz from the speaker, but looks like nothing. Got a light on there. They said it was plug and play. I didn't hear a beep though, so okay, well that's not great. Okay, I guess I'll try uninstalling the floppy and then installing this. I mean, maybe it's something where I don't know. I don't like how both of those are on like that. Okay, well, it looks like I've figured it out. It does seem like the slots do matter. When I kept this over in this slot here, 6 I think, and when I took out the floppy drive controller, it did boot into the hard card. So I swapped them. Again, I'm not an Apple savvy guy, so I don't really know how this works. So I put the hard drive card in slot 7, and I moved my floppy controller card over into spot 6. But I don't know if, like, is it one or the other? Like, I have to only have one or the other? Like, will this work in a slot other than 7? I don't know. I still haven't heard a beep, no matter what orientation I put it in. I haven't heard a beep from the Mockingboard. They said there should be like a speaker beep through my speakers here, and all I hear is the static. So it sounds like it's like initializing, but I don't hear a beep, regardless of how I orient the cable, which is not encouraging. But let me just show you. This thing is really fast, so let me just show you what's on the screen here. So I'm hitting power now. That's pretty quick. So now I don't know what any of this stuff is. There's ProDOS. I have no idea what any of this is. I can use the arrow keys here and go down. Again, I don't know. I'm not an Apple guy, so I'll have to mess around with this a bit. But I think what I need to use, I need to take out that CF card and put it in my Windows PC and then use a program called CiderPress, and then I could move the hard drive image for our Nox Arcanist onto the CF card, and then it should show up in this list. And then when I boot, I just go down to it and like hit enter, and then the game starts, I'm guessing. Let's see what happens when I go into ProDOS. I'll hit enter. Is this ProDOS? Okay. Didn't seem to do anything. Return is select. That's what I did. Let's... Okay. So I don't know. Maybe this is ProDOS that it boots into. I'm completely stupid when it comes to Apple, so I'm sure there's Apple guys laughing at me right now. Alright, I'm still impressed with the sharpness of this Apple Color Composite monitor. It's really actually pretty sharp for composite. This is kind of a nice monitor here. I did notice games. We've got GS games, Apple II GS I'm guessing, Apple IIe games, and then just games. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go into games. I don't know, let's see if Oregon Trail, good old Oregon Trail is on there. Yeah, right here. So what happens when I click on it? Are these like the disk images? I don't know what to do here. I'll just click things. Okay, there it is. Oh, that's kind of cool. So we got the games. I'm not hearing anything though, like the speaker beeps. I think there were speaker beeps at this part in the game. Okay, hold on here. I'm just going to get as far as I can. I know there's some sound, so I can test the speaker. Alright, so I ran Oregon Trail again because I know this part has a tune. I rehooked the speaker up, and it played fine. So it's hooked up now, and I mean, it seems to be hooked up normally, and I don't know if you can hear that. Like, I can barely hear it. This is turned up all the way. It's real fuzzy, but I can barely hear it, so it's kind of working, but not really well. This seems to be, you know, I checked all the connections. Everything seems to be connected okay. I don't know, maybe the speaker's too far away, or I don't know, it doesn't make sense. I'm not sure why it's not really coming through the speaker clearly. Maybe there's some kind of adjustment or something I need to do. I don't know. I need to check that. I still haven't tried out the Floppy emulator. I don't even know if only one or the other will work. Like, if you have the hard drive card here, like your floppy, you can't have floppy drives. I can see why with this hard drive card you might not even need floppy drives, because if you can just transfer everything to the hard drive, it seems to work much better. I would like to have both options available to me, but I don't know. I did see on the wiki for this hard drive controller, though, you can, if you hold down a certain button or something on boot, it won't auto boot from it, and then I think it will go to the floppy. So I'm pretty sure both will work. I just got to figure all this out. I'm still an Apple II newbie in many ways, so I just got to figure this all out. Okay, so I've connected this guy up here, and it's actually really easy to navigate. I went to Choplifter disk image that's on here, but unfortunately I think there's a conflict with these. Like, I looked at the wiki, and it said if you hold the escape key, it will bypass it. It will go to the floppy controller, and it will boot from the floppy. But I am not having that happen. I hold this down, and I power it up, and it just goes to, it still boots to the hard drive. So, I don't know. I'm gonna have to. I'm going to pull this probably in a minute and then see if this works without the hard drive controller. But the key is getting them both to work at the same time if possible. Alright, okay, so let's test how this floppy emulator works. I've got it powered up, but we're just at the Apple II screen. So there's Choplifter. So I think this button right here is enter. Hear it? Oh. And it should be loading the game. Yep. Alright, so this is actually pretty neat. This seems to be working well. It's just, I mean, obviously this guy is much faster, but this seems a little more user-friendly, maybe. But even with this, you're still going to be doing like disk switching and stuff. I would like to just get things working off this hard card here, or at least get them working in conjunction with each other if I can. So still got a little bit of ways to go with this project. Okay, well, I think I found a way to make everything kind of work in harmony here. I've got the hard drive controller in slot 7 and the floppy drive controller in slot 6. So it boots to the hard drive controller, and then it boots into the ProDOS, or Apple ProDOS. Now I found out I can change the volume by hitting tab, so I can tab through, and I think on the third hitting of tab it gets to the floppy disk drive, and then so it looks here, and then I can load up a game from there. So it seems to work. So I don't think with this configuration I can ever boot from the floppy drive, but that's fine. I can boot from the hard drive, and then if I need to access, yeah, see, I've got Nox running. If I need to access the floppy disk, or if I want to play something through the floppy disk emulator, or if I hook up a real floppy disk controller, I can do that. So things seem to be working fine. The only hitch in this setup I found so far is, for whatever reason, I just hooked the speaker back up, but because I just can't seem to get the speaker sound to output to the speakers. Now, when it's using the Mockingboard sound, or the chips on the Mockingboard, it sounds fine, like we just heard a minute ago. But for whatever reason, I just can't get it to pass through the sound correctly. It's very staticky and low volume. So right now, I've rehooked the speaker up. So speaker sounds come through the PC speaker, and then Mockingboard sounds come through the external speaker. So what do we got? Insert overworld. Disk drive 2. So let me just do this. Okay, next to eject. This is all pretty neat. I really like this. Go down to, sorry about the focus, go down to overworld and then hit this little button here. And then I'll hit, and there we go. And now it's loading up the game. So this, yeah, okay, cool. This is working out good. Like I said, just the two little hitches is I can't get the speaker sound to go through the card. That's not a big deal. And I'd also like to play some of these guys. I'd like to get Nox Archaist on the hard disk as opposed to the floppy. And I haven't quite figured that out yet either. Let me go back in. I did find there are some neat little things here. If you go down to utilities, you can go down, I don't know what any of these do. Really, I can only guess. But there is a cool Apple IIe diagnostics program. And it seems to work. I ran some diagnostics tests, and they are pretty interesting. You can hit do all the diagnostics tests, and it does things. It checks your RAM and all the little different video things. It checks your sound and all that. So that's kind of cool. Hello all. So it's been a little over a week. I've had some time to mess around with the Apple IIe a bit and play around with these upgrades a little bit, and I did discover a few things. First of all, certain games like Dig Dug, I was having an issue with games when it would ask you to use the keyboard or the joystick. It just wasn't working for me. Like, it would just beep. And then I discovered that the caps lock button actually has to be depressed for it to work. I find that a little weird because I would think the opposite, like it would just have to be in its default position. But you actually have to depress the caps lock key and then it works. So I thought that was a little bit weird. The other thing I learned is the proper way to actually load games with the reactive micro with the turbo drive. So before, what I was doing to load games, because I didn't realize, I was just going down here to the IIe games, and then I would go in and I would pick my games, and some of them would work. For instance, as we saw earlier, Oregon Trail works just fine. You know, if you select this mecc.system file, it will load up and play just fine. I've played several games. But most games would not. So let's take this game here, Neptune, for example. If I would hit enter, I would get the file type mismatch. So this is what I found is the correct way to do it. And I actually discovered this actually reading the wiki for the turbo drive online. Very helpful. I do advise you actually read like the manuals or the instructions. So this is what I discovered. The correct way to do it is actually you go down to, IIe games, and then you do this boot.system, and it's a little bit clumsy, but it works. And then you go down to IIe games, and then you go over to the game again. Let's try the same game. And there it is, Neptune, and now it should work. Yep, so now it works. So that is a good way to actually, access any games you actually have on the drive. Unfortunately, though, my biggest reason for doing this was to play Arx Archaist. Still does not work. I cannot get it to work from the turbo drive. Now, I have contacted and I've talked to their technical support. I told them the process of, adding it to the compact flash card. I sent them screenshots. They said everything looked set up okay. It looked fine in Ciderpress how I was doing it. But they can't, I haven't heard back. It's been like 4 or 5 days yet. They said they were going to see if they could recreate the issue, and I haven't heard back, but they said everything looked okay. So I still have no idea why the game is not working from the drive. They did also say that the drive is officially supported now, so it should work. But again, I can't figure out why it is not working. So I tab over, and one moment. Okay, so that's right. I have the floppy emu hooked up right now, so I'll go over again. So here it is. Now they reiterated you are just supposed to click this Nox X arc.system and it should work, but unfortunately it doesn't work. It just throws me to the RAM screen, and then it will, if I go back to it, actually it will it does this. So yeah, I still have no idea why I can't play the game from the hard drive. If any of you guys know, please let me know, but I can't figure it out. And so far, the dev team for the game hasn't really been able to give me any answers, so I don't know what's going on. But I do have good news that I've discovered. So what I did discover about the floppy emu or mu is that it does actually now support multiple disk drives. So Nox Archaist requires 2 disk drives, and basically I guess the original firmware of this only supported 1 disk drive, but with a firmware update it actually now supports 2 disk drives, so I actually can play the game through the floppy emu or mu as if it was on floppy disks. So I believe it's the main that I go to. I pull up the main, and then, let's see, I've done this several times already, but I should be able to, oh, that's right, I'm still on. So here I'm just booting up and loading through the floppy emu. And as we've seen earlier, the game should work, but I've actually experimented with this a little bit, and yeah, the game actually does seem to load up and work through the floppy emu. Unfortunately, I'm still having that same issue where sound effects, when I route them through the Mockingboard, it's very faint, you can't hear them. So for right now, I'm just having sound effects coming through the speaker on the Apple IIe, and then the Mockingboard, I've set up these 2 speakers on the side to play sound through those until I can figure that issue out anyways. So what is my opinion on these upgrades I've done? Well, I guess it was kind of successful. I mean, everything pretty much has done what it's supposed to do. You know, I have run into some hiccups. It is a little bit of a bummer that I can't get Nox here to run from the hard drive, even though supposedly it's now officially supported, and supposedly I'm doing everything correct and it should run. It's not. But the floppy emu, thankfully with the firmware update, kind of lets me play it that way, which in a way is sort of a little more authentic. I mean, you would be playing games from the time period through a floppy drive, and I don't think it's accessing things, you know, any faster. So I get the nice, you know, wait times. I can grab something to drink while it's loading up the next disc. Actually, so far it hasn't been taking that long, but I mean, yeah, it's a bummer. But other than that, the hard drive emulator seems to work. I think I still would have preferred like a booty drive, but I can't seem to get a hold of one of those. Supposedly they're a lot more user-friendly, and I can just use a USB stick and transfer things back and forth. I don't know, I might pick up one of those and see if I have a better experience if one ever pops up or they come back into production. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty satisfied with this setup. It seems to be doing what I need it to do. Will I be using the Apple II more now that I have these upgrades? No, probably not. I'm going to play through this game on the Apple II, and I just heard, I believe sometime next year there's an expansion coming out for this game too. I don't know if it will get a physical release, but that's interesting. So I do have something to play on my Apple II, but other than that, I don't know. Maybe if I come across any of those like obscure, rare, hard to find Apple II RPGs, Obviously I want to play them on real hardware, but as soon as I'm done here, this guy's probably going to go back into the storage unit. I don't know if it's going to be in my permanent setup, but anyways, that's my video on these upgrades. None of them are super expensive. At most, they're around a little over 100. For the hard drive card and the Mockingboard, it's a little over 100. I think if you get the whole kit too for the floppy emu, but I know that's a lot. To me, that's a lot. $100 is a bit of money, but it's not outrageous. So I still would see they are kind of affordable. So yeah, if you're an Apple II person, yeah, I guess I would definitely recommend them. They do what they're advertised to do. The turbo drive, the interface isn't like super user friendly in my opinion, but I'm a real big newbie when it comes to the Apple II. So if you're not a newbie with the Apple II, maybe it's a lot more user friendly for you. But anyways, thanks for watching this video. If you have any comments for me, or if you have any tips or something I should try, let me know in the comments. But other than that, thanks for watching and have a good one.